and welcome to the Big Fat Gay Podcast, where we talk about the things that are weighing on our minds. My name is Dan Oliverio, author, public speaker, and chubby chaser, and today I am in my big comfy chair on a bright, sunny, cold morning, and it is delightful. Very, very delightful.
A bright, sunny, cold morning.
Yes.
Nice.
Oh, I'm next. Oh, God. I'm thrown off because I'm Trevor Keyson. I'm a super chub, and today I'm an upstairs cold Zoom boy. We're back. I mean, not Zoom, actually.
Not Zoom.
We're using a
different platform.
Not Zoom, but still virtual. I just feel like I got thrown out in a big tap show, and I'm with all the showgirls tapping and dancing along.
Tap faster.
But nobody taught you the choreography.
Yeah, I'm getting my sea legs back.
Nice. Well, I am Michael. I'm a chaser. I am at home, and I'm a very tired, wake the hell up boy. It's gonna happen eventually. I promise. We'll get there. But yes, we are recording from a distance for today. So wish us luck, everybody.
Hey there, my name is Don. I'm a big chubby guy living here in sunny Hollywood, and today I am a very chilly boy. We currently have no heat or hot water in my building.
Oh my God.
No,
Oh my God.
Still?
Yeah. It's been fun. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Big Fat Gay
Hello.
Podcast.
The Big Fat Gay Bitch Cast.
So if we sound a little different
that
today,
suck.
if we sound a little different today, it's because we're trying out a new program as we
That's right.
record our podcast. So hopefully everything will go smoothly. But if we sound like strange tinny automatons, you know who to blame.
Zorg the ruler.
We do actually have a show to do. But before we do the show, we would like to thank our patrons on Patreon. We've had a nice little influx of people going on there supporting us. That is very awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to have some fun little minisodes coming out, hopefully in the next week or two, couple weeks, I would say.
It's exciting. It's exciting. We're thriving. We're, I don't know, in post-election, okay land.
Okayness.
Yeah.
It's just a flesh wound.
I was expecting a much worse post-election vibe instead of it's like when you get a shot and you're like, oh, it's done. It's, yeah, okay. Just put on the Band-Aid, I guess, and
We survived.
yeah.
So let's get to the show. What we have? Wait a second. We have a mailbag today.
We do.
How does that
we do.
happen?
Oh my God! But we have a mailbag, but we don't get the music,
can't
but our
play the-
listeners do. So I'm just gonna hear it in my head. That roll that
Just
beautiful
imagine it.
bean music. Rip.
Fun.
Should I read it?
Okay. Yes, Dan. Go ahead and take us into that mailbag.
So our listener writes, listening to the podcast this week and specifically about Chicago, in addition to all you guys spoke about, there's the infrastructure and seating. My experience has been places like Chicago just have better seating, lots of benches, sturdy wooden chairs, etc. But then the more fit quote unquote areas are all about molded seating and flimsy IKEA seating. I live in the Boston area and will often avoid trendy areas when going out because I know I won't have a good place to sit. Whereas in the old neighborhoods, they have these sturdy chairs. One exception is the new retro places that have long benches all across the wall and movable tables. My favorite. Yes, that is called a half banquette, where you have a bench along the wall and tables and then just chairs on the other side of that. That is my favorite seating too.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't realize this, and maybe you guys have a take on it. I always thought for the longest time that as a chaser, it was my job to sit on the bench part and give the chub chair that was easy to
I like
move.
the bench.
The only reason to do that is if the bench is somehow like it's a tiny little cafe and the chub getting to the bench would be massively inconvenient or uncomfortable. And if the chair is sturdy enough to take that, sometimes a chub might prefer that. Although then you have the concern of being too far out into the seating area. A lot of fat people really prefer the sort of security and stability of a banquet.
I think it was that whole like scooting between two tables
Exactly,
thing that
yeah.
I was sort of thinking about. Which in Boston, by the way, I am so sorry to this listener for like having spent a considerable amount of time in Boston. That is not a fat-friendly city. That's not a human-friendly city, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it's like I think the closer you get to Europe, the more you find that.
Yeah, you are brave. I appreciate all you have to deal with.
It's funny that they mention about the older parts of the city being more fat friendly, because I hadn't really thought about that with Chicago, but it's true. But I found kind of the opposite in New York. I think just because there's so much stuff that's older. Because there's parts of the city that I've been in that are like buildings that are old where like I can't get in the doorway because it's just like it's so tiny. And then I think I talked about this a couple episodes ago with there was a bookstore we went to where like I could barely get in the door, and then like the bookcases were so close together that I had to like sidestep through all of them.
Yeah, you did not do well in that retail space.
It was funny when we were out in Las Vegas. I went to a sushi place with a couple Chub and Chaser guys, and they had done the research. The restaurant itself was super spacious. The chairs were great. Everything was well set up for us. And then someone tried to go to the bathroom. And they had
foolish
all this
mortal.
Stacked on the hallway that like you had to turn sideways and like scooch down a wall to get to the bathroom, and then like the bathroom was like 2 feet by 6 inches wide, and you know it was
Yeah, I could go on about the inconveniences of living in Boston, but
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I was just picturing the fire department swooping in at all these businesses as soon as they hear they're not fat compliant. You know, like
I mean, that would be pretty cool.
Especially if they do it shirtless.
Are you aware that your restaurant is not up to fat code?
I think I've said it on the show before, but the fire department around the corner from me is just like it's straight out of Central Casting. They actually like clean the fire engine shirtless once or twice a year, and like I become a stereotype. Yeah, pretty much. We got some. I think they move all the firemen that are too hot for West Hollywood out to me because it would cause a distraction.
They're too hot. Get them out.
They're gonna start their own fires. Well, anyway,
they are firemen.
we have a show. Let's get into that pop culture. The music.
Da, da, da. Da, da.
It's jazzy. It's brassy. It's playing right now, probably.
I love this story in pop culture. Should I or not?
Yeah.
Well, and I thought
go for it.
I want Dan to kind of do his whole Professor Dan thing with some of this because
thank you, Trevor.
I thought it was interesting. A spin on Fat Bear Week because Fat Bear
So we
Week
have
has
talked
come
about
and
Fat Bear Week.
Yeah. So for those who don't
in the past,
for those who don't remember, don't know, Fat Bear Week is when the media suddenly becomes fixated on the fattest animal bears in the wilderness.
And you get to vote on the best fat animal bear.
And there was a bit of a scandal this year when the bear named Colbert got basically there was a
I don't know how they tracked it, but there was a vote bomb for it wasn't Colbert, it was Holly.
This isn't actually what we're supposed to be talking about. This is context, everybody. So the actual article that we're talking about is from the Washington Post, and I think Dan just set it up because it's very, as Trevor said, Professor Dan.
So, it seems that the Washington Post has tracked the research on hibernating bears, because hibernating bears are a rather interesting situation where you have bears that deliberately gain weight, go into a state of complete lethargy to the point of twilight sleep, and yet come out of it suffering no ill health effects, no muscle wasting, no diabetes. How is this possible? And scientists have set to work. And it's actually a rather complex question, but what they're really looking at, and I thought this was really because the thing I keep saying all the time is that, when somebody's on you about being fat, it's never about your health. And this is sort of the bears coming up in the parade saying that it's actually like they can do everything that you're not supposed to do, but their health remains really great. So scientists are looking at why they, for example, do not lose significant muscle mass when they spend 3 months asleep, not moving. Why and why do they become completely insulin resistant going into hibernation or in my hibernation, but not coming out? They become incredibly insulin intolerant.
It changes.
And they've done experiments where they actually take, using the blood from hibernating bears does different things to cells than the blood from non-hibernating bears or when they come out of hibernation. So anyway.
Yeah. And they tested it on a few different types of muscle tissue from other species and saw similar types of effects on those tissues as well, using the bear blood from the different stages of hibernation versus non-hibernation.
Yeah, they actually saw fat cells soaked in the I guess it was the bear blood coming out of hibernation. I'm not sure which group it was, but basically they saw fat cells becoming resistant or non-resistant just by being in this environment, in this biological environment.
Which, of course, so I will say this Washington Post article is very quick to say that in humans, this would kill you.
Meaning
the whole gaining weight and then losing weight and then gaining weight and then losing weight.
Well, I mean, yo-yo dieting is not exactly a great idea, but the idea is that being fat will kill you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it is really interesting because they're looking at it as a way to eventually, if the research goes in a certain way that they hope it does, and there's still a lot left to do, to help treat diseases like diabetes, where this clearly has some measure of control over how your body handles insulin. That is not unique to bear biology. It's something that seems to have an impact on other types of biology as well. So. There's a lot of promise in it. And look, fat bears are saving the world.
I've been saying that for years.
It makes me think about would they try to replicate the whole kind of weight gain hibernation process in humans for astronauts going to Mars or something?
Well, the direct application they mention is, for example, people who are fat but can't exercise. They're either, for some reason, they're bedridden or they're wheelchair bound, and so movement is actually very difficult for them. How would we prevent muscle wasting?
Yeah, and I mean,
that was one of the applications they mentioned.
Putting people into an induced coma for a while can also create a huge amount of atrophy. So if they could, it would allow a lot of medical applications too.
I think here for me, because the research is in such early stages, this kind of for me is the bright ray, which is sort of abstract, but here we go. It's all there's this whole conversation in healthism about being natural, something about being natural, which actually doesn't have a really great definition, since, as someone once said, that which is impossible is the only thing that's unnatural. We've been told that gay people aren't natural. That's not the natural way to have sex. And we've been told that fat people aren't natural because your body isn't supposed to be that way. And it even extends to medication, right? It extends to this idea well, sure, your blood sugar is controlled, but that's because you're on medication, and that's not a natural way to take care of it. So I love this because it really brings back into, hey, there are animals out there, maybe even humans, that are very fat, gain weight, lose weight, and it's perfectly natural for them. They've actually evolved to have that facility. Anything from walruses to hibernating bears. So I love that this is sort of the counter to that current in the conversation about healthism.
I also like that this is the next step towards an evil scientist gene picking to create
it is
the perfect human being. We are well on our way towards just sort of crafting
bear people,
humans.
Well, I was gonna say,
another 30 years, we're all gonna look exactly the same. We're all gonna have the same body.
So the body of 747.
That is sort of an interesting thing here, because then it becomes, because if you can start manipulating things like hormones or enzymes like myostatins and proteins like that, you really have an unprecedented degree over what you want your body to look like, whether it's hypermuscular, hyperfat. There's a lot of variability that suddenly becomes under your control because all we got now is, genetics and hormones. And we think the way to control hormones is through diet, which is a really poor way to do it, and blah, blah, blah.
I'm very excited that, as I said, the fat bears are saving the world.
Of course.
That to me is the major takeaway.
Every time we talk about Fat Bear Week, I really want to implement like a countrywide Fat Bear Week where we celebrate, me, fat bears.
You mean like
people just
almost like a bear jamboree, Don?
Yeah, like if people would just like stop me on the street, run up to me, like I'm just picturing people running up to me, like throwing glitter in the air, joining arms around me, and like dancing a maypole. It'd be wonderful. Like it would be a happy week.
I love that you're.
Well, do you want a country bear jamboree? We have.
What do you want them to do to your maypole?
Oh boy,
it doesn't involve.
He was a small child. Don has had the ambition to be a maypole.
That's it. Oh wait. Oh no, we're not there yet. Never mind. I was going to slam the fat watch
button. No,
but we're not there
yet.
Oh my god.
We have something much more wacky to talk about.
Yes. I am dying to know people's reaction to this.
So this is a short film created by the Vienna Tourism Board or something like that. It actually says at the front. And it's called What Does a Belly Do in Vienna? But it is not just your typical like tour of the city via like drone. This is a story-based short film narrated from the perspective of an actual very fat
but
belly.
Just the belly.
No person attached, a living belly, sentient belly who has been exercised away from the man that he used
because
to
the man
belong
lost
to.
his belly. Get it? And I also love that this is literally a belly with legs. If you've ever been treated that way, this is actually the commercial in which it is depicted.
With a lovely derby.
With a lovely derby, yes.
Yeah.
He's fashioned up.
And so he's written a letter to his ex, essentially, who got rid of him, and said that he's going out on his own because he wants to find out who he is and he wants to find a place where he's loved. And so he's going through Vienna and experiencing all of the wonderful things you can experience in Vienna. And they make sure to say things like, oh, at this one stunningly upscale hotel to have a place where your belly fits. And like, it's not
just a single gimmick at the start.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the setup. What did everyone think while watching that?
I love this. And you have to understand, I have the prejudice that I've been trying to get Trevor to Vienna for quite some time. I have friends there whom I met in my travels in Europe, and I really, really, really want to go to Vienna. And this, to me, is like everything I could have ever said to Trevor about why to go.
Wow. Well, so Trevor did that. Yeah. Did this convince you?
So I had two separate reactions to this because the first time I watched it, I didn't know there was sound, so I was just kind of watching it like on Twitter, and I was like, this is very strange.
Yeah.
That would be very strange.
The exact same thing happened to me.
Yeah.
Exact same thing happened to me.
And then I watched
it's all voiceover.
I watched it again, and I was like, oh, there's a voice. And the second time I really liked it, and I was like, this is just so sweet. And I loved the little kind of ending of the most beautiful way to love yourself is to indulge.
Yes, that is the tagline. That is the controlling concept. The best way to celebrate yourself is to indulge, and the belly does.
Yes.
And they get back together in the end, which is always...
They do. They have lunch together at a cafe.
And he's laughing. Big belly laughs.
I also love that it's so much about accessibility and indulgence, and they're not shying away from it. They're not like, oh, you don't have to eat in Vienna. We have these other things you can do. We're like, no, you should fucking eat in Vienna. And here's why. And here's a dessert cart coming down to the belly. And here's this amazing, huge bed that the belly gets to jump on and roll around in. And I think it's just such a wonderful way to celebrate that and to strike a blow against anti-fat bias by literally glorifying obesity as your tourism campaign. God, I love that.
And one of my favorite parts, maybe my very favorite part, was he goes to, I forget which art museum, but gets to look at all of these Renaissance paintings that are sort of famously like glorify the human form as it was,
and the belly. The belly is like looking at all the other bellies of all the art.
Exactly, which was an awesome way to kind of, I don't know, like, I guess illustrate how obsession with thinness is a relatively recent phenomenon. And that, not so long ago, that was very much not the case in the sort of idealized artistic vision of somebody in the Renaissance, which is super cool. Dom, what did you think?
I was on both sides of the fence on this one, like, because I could see what it was doing, but if I put my thoughts aside, my sort of visceral reaction was like, I'm more than a belly. Like, stop like relegating me to being just this one thing. And so, yeah, my emotions and my thinking were not aligned in this one. That's the best way.
Well, I don't think they're saying he's just a belly. I think the whole point is
I am aware
the
of
man
that.
has been divorced from his belly and therefore can't enjoy life.
Fully cognizant on what they were doing and what they were attempting to do, but my visceral reaction was still one of
belly.
Yeah, I don't know why my brain goes there, but yeah, so like I don't take any sort of offense at it because my brain can step in and say like you're reacting inappropriately, but I don't know. I wasn't able to sort of celebrate it the way you guys were.
Yeah.
That's fair. There is an uncanny valley that you have to get over at first, but once you realize that the belly has a whole personality, and it's sort of cartoonish.
Yeah.
And it is a real prop and not a CGI thing, which at first it kind of looks like CGI.
Well, I think the thing that made it better for me was there's a scene where the belly is walking down the street. He looks into a restaurant and you see another man having dinner with his belly.
Yes, I love that part.
Yeah.
And they're laughing
having a
and they're enjoying themselves and they're enjoying each other. And I think that's the thing that sort of helped me emotionally break out of where I was, where I'm like, this is actually doing what it's purporting to do. So I was happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
Time to slam that button now.
Ready?
I'm ready.
It's 2022.
It's Fat Watch. We're here. We're queer. We're fat.
We're still getting used to it.
We're still,
Vogue is coming in again.
But you know who's not still getting used to it because she's already owned the whole space and then some?
Jessamine Stanley.
She is a social media personality. She is, I guess you could say, an influencer, but she is so much more than that. The headline that we're talking about right now is that she is teaching naked yoga on OnlyFans. So extrapolate from that all the various social media versions of that kind of personality. So I follow her on Instagram. She's constantly posting all kinds of like very like liberation-y, like do your thing videos, whether it's talking to the camera about something she experienced or like eating a certain meal or a recipe or doing yoga in her yard, slightly clothed because it has to be for Instagram. And she did talk about like, obviously she's this fat woman who has had to go through her own journey of accepting her body. And she talks about yoga as being this sort of absolutely pure exploration of your body in ways that are very confronting at first. But the fact that it's naked, in her case, sort of strips it down, pun intended, to the absolute bare essentials, which is you're not trying to fight through your clothing. You're not in a class like worried about how you look and how well your pants fit or your tights, and
or competing using your clothing to compete in the class. Like, how do I look? What am I wearing?
Yeah. It just takes all of that brain power that you associate with a lot of stress and anxiety, which is the opposite of what yoga is supposed to be. It takes it away. And she does make a point of saying that she is the one who is naked. You do not have to be naked yourself to follow along, to appreciate the poses and everything.
And it's OnlyFans, so like who would know if you were naked?
Yeah, it's not like you're all joining a Zoom class.
Yeah.
I mean, she's sort of leading her own class. Anyway, the coolest part about this to me, besides the fact that she's awesome, is that this is in Vogue, and this is not apparently not her first time doing an interview with Vogue.
Yeah.
I mean, the interviewer specifically says, Emma Spector says, the first question is, how have you been since the last time we talked? Which I think is super cool.
What I loved about this is just kind of, so when she's talking about the difference from, naked yoga versus clothed yoga, I really kind of relate because I don't do naked yoga or anything, but I went through
Not unless you subscribe at $20 a month.
I'm at that like $50 tier, baby.
Oh, my bad.
That's right. Value yourself.
Whoa.
And by the way, you probably could
Oh yes, trust me, Michael. I've had this, so anyway, I have kind of like, so when I started going to the gym, I would always I had, I don't know, just kind of typical gym shorts and stuff, which I quickly realized I hate that because I found all this fabric and everything got in the way of being able to move my body or just use equipment or anything. I don't know. I'm thinking about the Pilates stuff I do and what would that be like naked?
Well, the other difference too is that, for fat people, your body changes shape so much more dramatically when you change positions. Just think of standing versus sitting and what that does to pants and things like that. So having enough fabric to cover you in one posture may be just way too much fabric in a different posture. And so naked or with Lycra, you can really minimize all that.
I don't know. I should try doing some things naked because I'm thinking about I have a lot of, I don't know, meat. And I'm just thinking about, I almost feel like it might be difficult in some ways.
Would you be willing to do that in front of your Pilates instructor? It's only one.
I know. I would. I'm not going to be like, hey.
No, hold on. Yeah.
Let me. I need to try something out. Bear with me for a second as I'm just peeling off my clothes.
I'm also sort of grossed out when people wearing shorts don't wipe down the machines afterwards. I'm only picturing what naked people not wiping down the machines are going to leave.
He's in the living room, so there's no. Yeah. It's fine.
This is Zoom. This is Zoom yoga or Zoom Pilates.
No equipment was harmed in the filming of this episode.
At least not that wasn't super into it.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jessamine is being awesome. You can find her on all the various social medias. It's not just OnlyFans. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I follow her on Instagram. She's very inspiring. Okay, well, so let's do it. Let's dive
main topic land.
Wildly veer into our main subject for today. Trevor, I think you should set this one up.
So we were doing our little podcasty talky thing, and we were thinking about the holidays, but also kind of this running theme we've had of shifting perceptions. And we thought it would be interesting to talk about how we have had personal changes in how we perceive certain foods or drinks or aha moments or just things like that.
And working through any traumas associated with food that may have cropped up over the years as well.
I feel like your relationship with food is a good thing to touch in with every once in a while, no matter what your body type is or what your mentality is. All of us have just come through, a COVID quarantine that's lasted 2.5, 3 years at this point. We have all had to re-examine some things, and it's good to try and see where you are right now. So where are we right now?
Hello. Personally, we're all in different places.
I could start if people want me to start.
Yeah, go for it.
I think probably what I am this is such a huge taste shift for me that I am almost known for it, at least among the people who know me. So once upon a time, I didn't drink. I didn't drink for decades, not because I was alcoholic, not because I had whatever the reasons are. It was never part of my socialization as a kid or a teenager, even more remarkably. And literally, it must have been 30 or 40 years later, I was really into cooking and I would cook with wine. And eventually it just became this thing where it got to be silly that I will do all these things with wine except drink it. So I started drinking wine, and then I tried to find a beer I liked, and then I got into spirits, and Michael can tell you how that went.
Yes, I am the one of the primary beneficiaries of Dan's.
Michael is Dan's
explorations into
Frankenstein monster.
Yeah. I have to say, I had a similar. I don't remember any particular moment where I tried alcohol as a kid and didn't like it and put it away. I just similarly, it was not a presence in my family so much. My dad would have like a beer or two and watch a basketball game or something, but it was not like a big deal. So I waited till I was 21. And then have had a perfectly fine time drinking since then. I've been through a couple moments where I'm like, okay, I'm done for a while, and then didn't drink for 6 months or a year or whatever, and then now I drink now. But having Dan as my mixologist is excellent because it has gone from a function of like either A, getting rid of social anxiety at a party where I don't know people, where drinking can feel kind of essential, but it's utilitarian, or B, you're out somewhere where it's just expected, like you're out with friends at, a nice restaurant or a bar, and you're like, well, of course you're going to drink. And now I get this experience of like, it's fun. It's like an exploration. It's like, try this, try that. Do you like it? Don't you like it? What don't you like? And it's kind of like wine tasting. It's like,
it becomes very,
yes, this hits very hard on the palate and then smooths out at the end, like you get to kind of play with it. It's really fun.
I guess like with me and alcohol, because I don't drink, and I don't know, have a very different background in my sphere with alcohol than Dan and Michael. Were like, I'm from the Midwest.
Oh yeah,
I am from my family's background is Irish, Italian, Polish, so a lot of drinking.
You grew up where drinking was an Olympic sport, for Christ's sake.
Yes, but there's also like a lot of alcoholism in my family. I witnessing a lot of people like, oh, they definitely have alcohol poisoning right now. So like very different vibes with alcohol for me. I still don't drink, but I can like, I don't know, appreciate things about wine when Dan has me smell it or taste it. I feel like very low level where like, I'm like, oh, this is, I used to be like, oh, this is very red. I'm getting the notes of red, which is different from the notes of white in the other glass.
I have one foot in Trevor's world too, where like, I had family members that had issues with alcohol. So for me, it was like a rebellious streak. Like I refused to do it because, I knew other people who had abused it, blah, 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 blah. And it just became part of my picture of myself was that I was a non-drinker. And then eventually, I think it wasn't until I was in my 30s where I'm like, who am I trying to prove something to? And started trying to sort of open myself up to a few other experiences,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we can be that way with food too. I know my relationship with, edibles, I mean edible food as opposed to potables.
Oh, I thought you meant pot edibles, which has been a shift for me too, but we can circle back to that.
I think that may be another episode.
Yeah.
If it had added sugar in it, it was a no-go food, right? Like that was a food I was not supposed to eat. I was always going to have someone standing behind me telling me that was not something I should be having. So, my relationship to pleasurable foods, like foods that you eat, like desserts and things like that, that was a big journey for me because like on one side, it is my brain is telling me that is the culmination of all cuisine. All the best foods come at the end of the meal. And there's another part of my brain that's telling me that's for someone else. Like you should not be having that. So it's very weird to have your brain telling you at the same time that like, this is the pinnacle of all things and you are not, and it is not suitable for you. Right. So I feel like your relationship to the world, like that's a good way of like seeing what the gatekeepers are in your existence. If there's a part of you telling you that the best things are not for you, that's going to be an issue in your life in other areas too.
Yeah.
I have a weird version of this too, which is because the sugar thing is a big thing for me. That's probably my biggest like food struggle. And growing up, having sort of hippie health foodie parents, or at least my mom, there was no refined sugar for I mean, we would do like Halloween candy. Like it wasn't like, you'd military or militant, but it was definitely, we didn't just keep sweet things. My mom would make cookies, but we didn't keep candy around or anything like that. And so I was constantly chasing sweets. Like it was kind of a running joke in my family. And it was like, oh, he's got the sweet tooth, the grandfather's sweet tooth, because my grandfather also had a big sweet tooth. And as an adult, and having done some research about ADHD, one of the most common ways to get a hit of dopamine, which is at its basic level, ADHD is a dysregulation of dopamine, is food, and more specifically sugar. And so a lot of people with ADHD gravitate towards sweet foods because they don't get dopamine hits normally and regularly the way that regular people do. And so they have to go out and like find it. And you don't realize that as a kid, or even most adults, I think, don't realize that. But for me, it was really eye-opening to go like, oh, I've had a lifelong struggle with binge eating sugar and sweets. And now I kind of understand at least a piece of why that's the case. Yeah. And I don't have to deal with as much guilt about that as I used to. I still struggle with it, but
with me, there's definitely that psychological component of like, if the best way to get me to do something is to tell me you are not allowed to do that. Right? Or that is not for you. So
having done this myself, I have proven this theory.
It's funny because I have kind of the opposite experience, but not like where sugar wasn't really a thing in my household, but there were so many foods I never had because I was the youngest child. And there were just certain foods that were like not in our household because my mom had tried with my sister or my brother, and one of them wouldn't eat it. So I'm trying to think if this is the case, and I'm pretty sure it's accurate. I did not ever have broccoli until college.
Oh,
not because you didn't like it, but because
I didn't like it. Yeah, I didn't know if I liked it.
It just wasn't on the menu.
It was never something. Yeah.
Because Annie or Jordan didn't like it.
Yeah.
It is interesting, though, how the way you're introduced to a food can sort of define your context with it for the rest of your life. Like, I'm a food snob, no shock, but Velveeta, right? The first time I heard of Velveeta, someone introduced it to me and they just basically said, yeah, it's like cheese, but it's just made of oil. And like it, but it's fake cheese, right? And from that point on, I could not eat it. I could not put that in my mouth. It was just solid congealed oil, and I was refusing to eat it.
I don't eat it. I didn't know that, but I pretty much stayed away from it just because, like, oh my god, this tastes nothing like cheese.
But there are functions for it. I've had things I've had things made with Velveeta that were delicious, but I have a hard time putting it in my mouth,
I don't know if this is cutting room floor or not, but it's a good anecdote. So this is one of the stories I tell because I do a seminar about people's relationship with food. And this is one of the stories I tell about a colleague of mine, Boris. Now, Boris was from Germany. And the first time, like most Europeans, they come over here and they taste root beer. And it's pretty much the most disgusting thing they've ever tried. Unless they're from like a Scandinavian country because they like weird things and root beer is a weird thing. So he's from Germany, not quite northern enough. And he's tasting this root beer, when he first came to America. And he thought it was the most vile tasting mouthwash he'd ever had in his mouth. Fast forward, he's living in America, he's living in Santa Monica, and he learns that root beer is actually based on the sarsaparilla root. And because root soda was a very bad marketing campaign in 1920, whatever, they changed it to root beer, and then it flew off the shelves. So, but the idea that it was based on an actual root sounded to Boris like something healthy. This completely changed his relationship to root beer. And now he likes, and root beer then became for him a health tonic whose taste was interesting.
So I wonder, Dan, if this goes back to what you were saying earlier about how there are certain things that are unnatural. Yeah. And once he discovered that it had a natural origin.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I get
how else could you explain the popularity of kale? The shit's vile. I mean, come on. And yet, down the street from us, there is a new restaurant opening. It's going to be a sad awakening.
I don't think it actually is opening or not.
I got to say the name, though. Trevor, I got to say the name. Kale me crazy.
Ooh.
Destined for greatness.
So I think we could probably go on. Maybe we'll do a part 2 of this one because we did a lot of like alcohol, but there's other foods and other things that I know that we could talk about. Maybe different special meals of the year that we have a particular relationship with. Thanksgiving is coming up. But we'll leave that for next time. What about, I know for a fact that we have a very special tip today. This is on par, well, maybe not quite on par with the resources page, but definitely one of Trevor's big sort of shining projects. What we got?
Yes. So NAFA just the other day launched a new section of the website. It is our Fat Death Planning Resources Hub, which this is like kind of one of my babies. So I'm very excited that it's out there. This project came from the Future of NAFA committee, which I was part of before I was on the board. And it came from a discussion in my Instagram comments by someone who actually I think is a listener of the podcast and a random girl I went to high school with, talking about the fact that fat people can't be organ donors and they also can't donate their bodies to science.
Why would you do that?
And then which evolved into, we should have information about like what happens to your body when you die and you're fat. And we were also at the time working on life insurance options for fat people. So we're like, we can create all these resources kind of related to how being fat intersects with death, and just to create a space for fat people to take charge of the plans for when they die, or if someone has a fat relative and they don't really know what to do, somewhere they can go to get information.
You might want to say that one of the other challenges is just finding the funereal services that will deal with a large or a heavy body. It's not just a no-brainer like, a fat person died, so we bury them. There's a lot of intermediary steps that a lot of bodies are exempt from because of their size or weight.
Yes. So the first section that's out, it's basically about caring for your remains. So we have information about like questions that you'll get about, if you have a fat relative who dies, like, they need to know how much the person weighed, which is something that's kind of in fat liberation. There's a lot of talk about like, weight not being important, numbers not assigning
value.
Numbers not assigning value to people, but this is actually somewhere where numbers are important and measurements matter. So we have information about, just traditional burial, cremation, green burial, aquamation, which is a newer, it's basically kind of like water cremation, human composting, which is now legal in California, and I think will be available starting like 2025.
Yeah, I know Newsom just passed a law with that.
Okay.
Just lots of information there.
Nice.
And also, if you're in the death care industry and you like, I want to work on this, I want to contribute. We have a section where you can comment or contribute if you want to share something, or if you're like, I have a question about XYZ, so we can continue to work on this, so it can continue to thrive and evolve and
improve people's lives.
Yeah, improve people's lives.
And their deaths.
You can check it out at nafa.org/death planning.
It's
It's
a difficult topic, but it's a good one and a worthy one. And now that we have talked about our death, we are now ready for our dessert.
Yeah.
So we're getting our just desserts.
We are heading towards Thanksgiving, and we were talking about food today. So, for Thanksgiving, there's this couple different pies that we always have: apple, pumpkin, pecan. And you know what? Maybe we want something different. So today, each of us is going to bring a wonderful pie idea that we've never had, that we think maybe you should incorporate into your Thanksgiving, and we don't really care if you do or not. We want to do it to ours. So I can't wait to find out what pies people are excited to try. I guess this was my Dan wants to start off. Okay, Dan,
I guess I would call it a pie alternative, yet it still has a crust.
Okay.
You ready?
Okay. Out of curiosity, what makes it a pie?
This is a matter of great controversy and intrigue, Michael. Great controversy.
How
a pie is an internal filling that cannot stand up on its own, contained by a crust. That's how I would define it.
Very interesting definition. I don't know if I agree with it, but
Dan,
I like it.
All right,
So
what are you bringing, Dan?
So here's what I'm bringing. All right. So I call these apple fleur de lis because it's me. Of course I do. And So should I describe what it looks like first or describe how to make it first? What it looks like?
What is it? Give us the experience of it first.
Okay, so what arrives on your dessert plate, picture it, is on a smallish, well-appointed dessert plate. Imagine a little sort of tartlet, but instead of being contained in a flat sort of disc-like crust, the tart actually protrudes into 3 or 4 sort of fleur-de-lis of puff pastry.
Nice.
That contains spears of cinnamon nutmegged apple, which are then drizzled with a red wine caramel sauce.
Oh,
That sounds... Trevor, have you had this?
I haven't had this exactly.
I think you have. I think I've made it for you, but it might have been years since I've made it, so that's fair.
No, you made the red wine caramel, but you didn't make the
actual
tarts.
apple. Okay, so I will do that. And you should all experience this. So it's very. And here's the deal.
Yes.
It is ridiculously easy to make. Like it looks so impressive.
it sounds so good.
Yeah, but it's really super, super easy to make. Even the red wine caramel. The pie itself is just squares of puff pastry that have been pushed into a muffin tin so the corners stick up, and that's the fleur-de-lis. And then the apples are just wedges that you can even buy pre-cut from Trader Joe's, and you stick those in, and you bake it. And then when it comes out, you drizzle over the red wine caramel, which is really just a cup of red wine, a cup of cream, and a lot of sugar, and like 2 cups, 4 cups of sugar, I forget. But it's a delicious red wine caramel that I stole from Tyler Florence, celebrity chef.
Ooh. That sounds absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
Well, my idea,
Pidea?
because it's my pie idea. It's a pie idea. So I was thinking of, like, I don't know, spins on Thanksgiving-y things. And I was thinking of, God, was it this year? Oh, God. Oh, what a year. I did the Christina Tossi from Milk Bar's baking class, and I learned to make the Milk Bar pie, which is a very, like, thin variation on a chess pie. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking I could take that and mostly the same, maybe change some of the sweetener out for some molasses.
Is it a custard based? What kind of confection is it?
It's a custard. A chess pie is like a custardy pie, but this is different because it's really thin and it has an oatmeal cookie crust that gets really just firm, and it's a little bit firm but chewy.
It has like a chewy, almost like sticky chewiness to it.
Yeah.
It's really good.
But taking that and adding pecans. So basically making that into a pecan pie that would be like almost tart-like just because of how thin the filling is, but how thick the crust is. And it's just really sweet, but I think bringing in some more crunch could play nicely with just all the textures going on.
Mm-hmm. And pecans aren't like, they're not heavy. They're like, you get that crunch, but they sort of like, they'll compress really easily. They're not going to weigh it down.
Yeah.
Michael.
Okay. So mine is, it may not be that unconventional to some people, but to me, it would be a new experience. So Michael's, one of his favorite like Christmas movies is Love Actually. And in this movie, there is a very, very famous scene where I think Keira Knightley's character brings the sort of friend who's in love with her a banoffee pie.
Oh, banoffee pie, yeah.
Banoffee. They call it, I don't remember what they call it. Anyway, I had never heard of this before until I saw that movie like 2 years ago.
I haven't heard
I think
of
of
it
it as
at all.
very English. I think it's very English, yeah.
I suppose, yeah. I had just never heard of it, and they talk about it like it's disgusting. Like they in the scene, they're both like, "Oh, thank God you didn't want this because I didn't want it either." And I was like, "Okay, it doesn't look that bad." I looked it up, and like having never had one before, I guess I couldn't say. But being a fan of sweet things, this looks amazing.
You would love it.
There was a place in LA, I can't remember the name, but they specialized in different kinds of pies like that, and they would do little individual pies, and theirs was very good.
So let me just say what it is,
what is
so
it?
people
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
This is a mix of bananas, caramel, and whipped cream, and so you have a very English like digestive biscuit base with like a thick sort of caramel on the bottom, and then I don't know if you use sliced bananas or like a banana. Like banana flavored cream, or maybe you can do it a few different ways. And then you can, put like shaved chocolate on the top or something. It's pretty straightforward. We don't really have it here that I've seen. Like
it's not common in America.
Yeah,
certainly not the West
common.
Coast. And for people who are trying to figure out the name, it's basically a portmanteau of banana and toffee.
Toffee. Yeah. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Well, toffee being caramel or,
So the one at the place that the name escapes me, but they used, sliced bananas, and it was basically like, I don't know if they used digestive biscuits. They probably just used graham cracker. Like it was a graham cracker crust with dulce de leche in the bottom, and then banana slices and whipped cream. I actually think it would be pretty easy for anyone to make, because if you don't want to do the graham cracker crust yourself, you could buy one, get a can of dulce de leche if you don't want to make it yourself. Bananas. Oh, yeah, I really want that.
It's very
Sounds good
straightforward.
to me.
I've just never had it before. Yeah, I've just never had it before, and ever since seeing that scene, I first of all think both of those characters are idiots, and also want to try this.
Well, it's one of those Southern traditions. Is was it banana pudding?
Oh yeah,
I've heard a lot of Southerners rave about it, and I don't understand, so I will have to one day try and fix that.
And Southerners will dissect banana puddings the way other people talk about like the correct meatloaf or the correct apple pie. Like it is a thing that one debates.
It's like a regional pride issue,
And family.
There was a banana pudding festival not far from Nashville when I was in there. I didn't actually end up going because I wasn't there at the time, but yes.
So Americans, we're all about the sweet pie. We don't have a lot of savory pies in American cuisine, but I would love to try a Christmas goose pie one day.
Oh my.
Where I've seen things like it on like a Great British Baking Show, but I've never seen it in America. But it's like this standing crust, right? It's a pie that can stand on its own. And then you fill it with the goose and the stuffing and sort of like all of the trimmings from your Christmas dinner. And then you top it off with a cranberry sauce, and then you bake it all together. And oh my God, it looks so good. I want to try.
That would be exactly how a British cook would experience Thanksgiving leftovers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I love shepherd's pie. It's compared to sort of like a duck version of shepherd's pie.
Yeah, I guess.
But I'd be very much into this.
Nice.
So what pie do you want, dear listener? Are you going to open your table to one of the pies that we've brought today? And if so, how did it go? Trevor, where can they go to tell us?
Well, we're on Instagram and Twitter as @BigFatGayPod. On Facebook as the Big Fat Gay Podcast. 5 stars there. 5 stars on Apple, iPod, Tunes, podcasts. 5 stars on all the things. See the articles we talked about at www.bigfatgaypod.com.
Yay!
Well, maybe you're also on a Zoom-like thing right now, and you're distracted,
tuning out of your call.
And there's a bird outside, and it has Michael's head, and he's coming to get you. So
watch out.